Bang! Neeves Knives, I'm Jared, and here we have a really awesome new knife from BESTECH, the BESTECH CETUS. And I'll tell you what, I'm thoroughly impressed with this, and we're going to go over the reasons why here in 1 second. Now, it's not available yet, but it should be available soon. And, you know, we'll talk about the reasons why I think it's so awesome here in a second. Let's just talk about the materials really quickly. M390 steel. We have a titanium full bolster. Now, this does come in different colored titaniums, different, I believe, different coatings, and then also different handle materials. So there's different color micartas and then different color carbon fibers. So there's different flavors, but it is a faux titanium bolster. This one with micarta with steel liners to add, you know, some strength to it. And it is a poltergeist design. So you can see they got the see-through pivots and see-through hardware. That's hex hardware, which is really strong, very durable hardware. I love to see that. Now, the build on this thing is rock solid. This thing is an absolute vault, which I love to see because being a crossbar locks are super strong locking mechanisms, but some companies tend to allow themselves to have a little tiny bit of up and down. And I always appreciate, because just because that happens doesn't mean the lock's weaker, but I always appreciate when they really care about the lock-based geometry and they make it super duper solid, which this absolutely is. And you can really feel that lock engage, you know it's engaging nicely. Like I said, rock solid lockup. Now, let's talk about the blade really quick and what's so awesome about this blade, and then we'll couple it together with the ergonomics, because both of them complement each other perfectly. So this is a drop point tanto in M390, a drop point tanto. I want to emphasize that. Drop point tanto, not just a regular tanto. A lot of tantos are straight backs, right? This is a drop point, so it allows you, look at how I can just barely lift my elbow a little bit and I'm getting to that tip. So you get a massive amount of leverage into this very pokey tip. Now, while it's very pokey and very precision oriented, it is thick. This is a thick, robust tip, heavy duty, very thick, so it's gonna be very durable. So you're not gonna have to worry about it chipping or breaking or anything like that, but you're gonna be able to do crazy amounts of precision work. Like you have a lot of power down in that tip, and it drops down so nicely. You have so much control into that tip, so that's very nicely. Now there's something else about that works with the handle. We'll talk about that in a second. So super thick in this area, you know, for more robust things, and then also precision work with the tip. Move back here to the hollow grind. This is a super thin hollow grind, and because the thickness changes so much from this deep hollow to this super thick flat grind, you have this hump, which traps materials into this section right here. And I mean, when it traps it, you can do elongated cuts. Like it's almost like you're never gonna slip out of a cut. You know, obviously you can if you try to, but for the most part, with very little effort, you can do very long extended cuts. And it's comfortable, it blazes through things. So this thing cuts like a champ, like really, really good. Now, the sharp and plunge grind, perfect job. They executed it perfectly. You can see where the plunge ends. They did not taper it all the way down to the edge. They tapered it down rapidly to where you have plenty of life to sharpen off. Now, coming back to the handle, it's slightly contoured, and you see how it kind of cants down and then this way. It is so comfortable in the hand. It almost leans forward. And remember, we were talking about the tip. So this tip, you almost feel like it just wants to be jammed into something, because, you know, even though there's not like a finger guard or anything, because this swells up, it actually locks you in. Like I could just, you know, drill this into a piece of wood and not even worry, not even a little bit that I'm gonna slip. It feels like you have a lot of control, a lot of grip in it. It's very, very comfortable. Since it's slightly contoured, that adds to the comfort, the thickness, the width, you know, everything about the size and the girth of it and all that. It fits perfectly in the hand. Even this little corner right there rests perfectly, at least in my hand. So very, very comfortable. You can also turn it around and cut backwards. The pinch grips for utility cuts are good. So the blade and handle complement each other perfectly. You know, you can really tell that while designing this knife, it was designed with a purpose in mind. And I like that. I like that a knife has so much potential as far as what it's, you know, made for. This is going to be a fantastic cutter. Now, that being said, a lot of tantos might not be the most useful, You know, some are, some aren't. It just depends on what you do. This one's kind of the best of both worlds because a lot of times you don't get the precision in the tip. You do with this one. So I really like that. And because of this thing almost being like a, not a pistol grip, but you know, I don't know how to explain it, but because of the shape of it, it really leans forward and you feel like you have just so much control with this thing. Now, talking about the action. So the action is actually really, really good. Now it is a thumb disc, so I know thumb discs can be hit or miss, I know. And I'm not saying it's the best thumb disc knife ever, but it's not the worst for sure. So it's definitely one that when I first put it in my hand, it felt a little bit different. I felt like the disc was a little bit high, you know, I wished it was a little bit bigger. But then after flicking it, you know, for about 3 to 5 minutes, I really got used to it. And then you get used to the positioning of that disc, right where it lands, the texture of it, because it does have nice texturing on the edges, which I do always appreciate because a lot of discs come smooth and they suck. This actually has texturing, so it will grip you back. But like I said, after about 3 to 5 minutes of flicking it, I was like, man, this thing's actually kind of satisfying, you know? So I'm not mad at it. The action's pretty good. You know, I'll always with discs, you know, like I said, they're hit or miss. And I do think maybe, you know, the disc is up a little bit high, you know, maybe it can be slightly bigger, but also it's not going to catch on anything because it is less thick or less wide than the scales itself. And it's got plenty of room between the scale and the handle. So it actually, you know, works pretty good. And the more I flick it and the more I use it, the more satisfying it is. It's very, very smooth. Now, the actual crossbar lock is also, this is a very strong locking system. Very, very strong. And I really appreciate that this thing is so robust and so locked up solid. You can really hear the locking gauge. They did such a good job with that lock. I appreciate when they do the lock face geometry right and it's rock solid lockup, which this thing absolutely has. This thing feels like a vault. Now, going back to the action, the crossbar lock is easy to get to. There's lots of textures, well, not lots. There's a little bit of texturing on the, you know, the things right here that you put your fingers and pull the bar down with. So it actually is very catchy and very easy to get to. Very easy to pull down. And the one thing is though, the detent is a little bit on the lighter side. A lot of crossbar locks are like that. Now, there are some companies that have mastered the detent with crossbar locks, and they don't feel like they've done that here, but I also don't know if I'd want that because it has a disc. So if it had thumb studs, I would say the detent is a little bit light, but because of the type of deployment it has, I'm not too mad at it. But yes, it is a little bit on the lighter side. Now, as far as fit and finish and everything, if you look at the centering, perfect centering, and then the blade. Talk about blade to handle ratio. Look at that. Perfect. And I can't touch that tip at all. Like this, it feels so smooth right there, right where the tip lands. I mean, this thing has fantastic blade to handle ratio. The little details are definitely there. I like the fitment, the micarta, really, really good quality micarta. The finishing on the titanium. Now, as far as the coating goes, you know, coatings, you know, they're gonna wear. You know, I wish they kind of would have stonewashed this a little bit to knock down some of the wear that's gonna happen so it kind of blends in. I have used it a little bit and I can see in little areas where I was using it, but I tried to clean it off as much as possible. I didn't use it to the extent that it would really be wearing off the coating yet, but that is something that will happen with coatings. One thing is, it is still a tanto, so when you strop it or sharpen it, you are gonna have to treat these like two different edges. You're not gonna be able to go right over this hump right here. If you do, you'll basically take out this point and you will round it off. So you can do that if you want, you know, if you want to kind of just turn this into a dual ground drop point tanto, but if you want to keep it with the tanto, you're gonna have to treat this like two different edges. This is one knife, this is two knife. So when you strop it, you strop this section by itself and then this section by itself, and same thing with sharpening. Now the clip, man, I can't tell you how impressed I am with this clip. I love this clip. Now you can see how tall it is. So like, you know, even my thick jeans, and this is how I kind of test out clips these days. I have regular jeans with regular thickness pockets, and then I have some jeans, which are my favorite jeans, that are very thick, they have very thick pockets. So a lot of clips don't do good with them. Like, and I can't hold it against them too much because the pockets are so thick, but it's amazing when I can get a clip that goes perfectly into those because they're my favorite jeans, and this clip does great. It smoothly goes over the seam of the pants and goes nice and deep perfectly. There's no struggling to push it up, and it's just so smooth in and out of the pocket. You'll never have to worry about this tearing your jeans or anything like that. It holds really good, plenty of tension. Literally everything about this clip is great. And going into negatives, right? Let's talk about some negatives. So one thing, we already said it, you know, coatings are gonna wear, but that's not really a negative. It's just the way coatings are. So it's not that big of a deal. But actual negatives, let's talk about some negatives. So one, M390, BESTECH M390. Now, I'm not saying they do a bad job with it, but I do think they could do some improvements. So 59 to 61 is what they're HRCing it at. So 59 to 61, I'd rather see it 61 to 62. Now, M390 really starts, you know, coming together and really showing us what M390 is all about over 61. So that's why we want to see it at 61 to 62, because that's when the edge retention really starts shooting through the roof. And I know it seems like 59 isn't that far away from 61, but it is when talking about certain steels. And, you know, with M390 at 59, at around 59, while it still might outcut S30V and S35VN, it's not going to outcut it by a massive amount, but it will. It'll still outcut it. So there is still an improvement to have it at that HRC, but going to 61, now it's cutting circles around it. Like it's just like leaving it in the dust. So, you know, and also when you do lots of sharpening and, you know, you really get the feel of steels and also like the differences between 59 to 61, like how the burr comes up, how well it removes, the type of finish it takes, the level of sharpness it takes, and obviously how well it holds on to all that, you know, because it's one thing to take it, but it's another thing to hold it. And, you know, I really would like to see them just bring that up just a little bit. I'm not saying they're doing a bad job with it, but, you know, they could improve it just a little bit. One little tiny nitpick is that with the Tonto area right here, you can see they kind of misgrounded just a little bit. They rounded it a little bit more than, maybe it's kind of intentional to some extent, but I can kind of see where the two edges don't marry together perfectly. And it's kind of hard to do that because of the thickness change is so dramatic. So I'm not holding it against them too much. It still works really good, and you know, it's just fine. But you know, I'm just pointing it out. Really, man, there's really not much negative here. Like I said, the disc thing, you do got to get used to it. Take five minutes and sit there and get used to it. It's still a good one. It's a good disc. I'm not saying it's the best disc, but it's definitely not a bad disc. So I want to make sure I'm making that clear, because there's a lot of bad discs. This is not one of those. This is a good one. And you know, once you kind of get used to it, it feels really good. And like I said, the detent is on the lighter side, you know, but they kind of had to do it because of the disc. But all in all, you know, because of how useful it is, because of the ergonomics and the handle and the way the handle and the blade, how they complement each other and just how useful it is. I love to see a knife that has that look to it, because this thing looks cool, right? It's got the cool factor, right? So it's awesome when you see cool factor mixed with practical, because this thing works so good as a knife, and I love that. They knocked it out of the park, and I am very happy to see a knife be so useful and look so cool, because it has that cool factor going for it. And you know, when a knife has that cool factor going for it, you know, a lot of times it falls by the wayside as far as use goes and being practical. But this one excels. This actually does really, really good for EDC use. But anyways, work hard, stay tough. You know society's relying on you. Until next time, peace.